Terror came to London today in the heart of the rush hour. It was aimed at ordinary people using the tube, using a bus service. 4 powerful bombs left people dead, dying and horribly injured.
There's been reports of an explosion outside Liverpool Street Station. That, of course, in the East End of London.
This is a major incident. The emergency is a major incident. Still only being said that there are several people injured, though clearly from Eyewitnesses reports on the ground there are more injured than have at the moment been accounted for.
Many more had been terrified 100 feet underground when the bombs exploded.
And all of a sudden there was just explosion. A big white appeared, and then it was just smoke everywhere. In the tunnel, we was trying to close the doors because there was just smoke, you couldn't breathe.
The worst terrorist attack in Britain began at 8:52 this morning in a tunnel between Aldgate Station and Liverpool Street.
We were on there for like 30 seconds, and then there was just this explosion in the carriage next door, and then there was just all this smoke and you couldn't breathe.
7 people were killed here and scores injured.
People were forcing the doors to get some air in, and when being evacuated we actually saw the carriage and the roof and the side just went off. It was on the rails, and you literally saw people, like the people on the next carriages that were standing next to windows, their ears were blown up with blood all over the arms and everything, and the people that were inside the carriage, they were just literally full of blood and dark, and they were still screaming, and the paramedics were there. And
well, what I'm seeing is a lot of very, very frightened people. As you know, tube stations throughout London were being evacuated. Thousands of people pouring out of King Cross Station and Euston Station, and I was one of those that had to be evacuated, walking towards Russell Square, and suddenly a huge explosion on the street up in front of me, and all I could see was the top of a bus completely destroyed. We all heard an explosion, and everything just disappeared in front of me, and I'm looking at people with blood injuries and walking away from the scene. The police are already there, taping off the entire area, so no one is completely sure what has happened. But as far as I'm concerned, a bomb has gone off, or something has exploded on a bus in Russell Square, and there must be some considerable injuries.
I got on the tube at King's Cross, and literally just after we left the station, I was in the second carriage, and there was just a massive bang, and glass and everything just kind of went flying through the train. We couldn't see, we couldn't breathe, and it was, honestly, for the first 2 seconds we didn't know we were going to get out.
All the windows came in, and none of us knew what happened, and it was mayhem, and then the driver came out of the carriage, and which was quite scary because he shone a red light, and we all thought it was, I thought I was dead. I had a vision of a fire, and then he came out and said, he walked us through the platform. It was just, I don't know what happened. You probably know more than me. It was just, I don't know, but there's some seriously injured people there. It's not good.
I was in the front carriage and people were severely injured there. But I've heard, and I don't know if it's right, that people were even worse further back.
And this is inside Russell Square Station, was it, or further up the road?
No, it was in the tunnel between King's Cross and Russell Square.
And how do you describe the reaction of people in the train to what happened?
Very mixed. Some people were very calm, others were very panicky.
It was a day long feared in the capital. At Aldgate East, where the injured were treated on the pavement outside the station.
Please, if you're not being treated by any paramedic, please...
At King's Cross, where hundreds were moved to safety, having escaped the horrors below ground. And at Russell Square, what was left of the number 30 bus. Across the very heart of London, there was shock, confusion, and an almost palpable sense of fear among those caught up in the moment. The unthinkable had become reality. Below ground, in the pale emergency light, hundreds made their way through the tube carriages, a sense of claustrophobia all too apparent. Passengers battling smoke and soot. Scenes like these repeated in dozens of carriages in the 3 tube trains stuck deep in the tunnel system. Those that had escaped made their way onto the streets on the surface, traumatised.
Ladies and gents, we need to clear now Russell Square. Please, for your safety, Please start moving down. This is for your safety.
This was just 5 minutes after the first blast. There had been another explosion underground between Russell Square and King's Cross stations. People made their way to the surface in almost total darkness, some shaking with fear.
People started to scream because there was a burning smell, and everyone, just kind of long story short, thought they were going to die. People started saying prayers, praying to God, panicking, breaking the carriage windows with their bare hands, anything to get oxygen into the carriage, because the more people tried, the more distressed they became. Women passing out, people started getting very agitated. There was no communication from any drivers. Everyone was in pitch black. Then the emergency lights came on, and more smoke started coming into the carriage, and we were there for something like 20 to 30 minutes, during which the smoke intensified, the screaming intensified, the hysteria, and that's what it was, became almost to a state of pandemonium.
Pretty chaotic on the ground here at the moment. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people being evacuated from buildings in the surrounding area by Liverpool Street Station. A cordon's gone up around Liverpool Street, which, talking to one police officer on the ground here, he says that it stretches for about a quarter of a mile. Now, everybody within that cordon, in the shops, the offices close to Liverpool Street Station, are being urged to come out of their buildings, to go beyond this cordon. So the pathways, the streets are absolutely packed with people now. I have to tell you, this is an unofficial line. This is from one of the police officers that I've been talking to on the ground here. He says that he has been told that the incident that he is dealing with at Liverpool Station involves multiple casualties. The problem he says they have at the moment, which is why they've thrown the security cordon up, which is why they're evacuating everybody from the surrounding area, is that they really don't seem to know exactly what they're dealing with. Just talking to him, he says, look, we're trained to deal with every eventuality, be it nuclear, chemical, biological. He's not at all suggesting that it could be any of those things at the moment. He says he simply doesn't know. That's the problem. That's why they're having to evacuate everybody from this area at the moment. So people here are bewildered, unsure of what's going on, hearing reports of what's going on, but really nobody knows at the moment.
We just pulled out of Edgware Road, and next thing I know, there's a large flash of light. Felt a burning sensation on my hands, put my hands up to my face. I was on the floor by that point. Yeah, I can't recall anything prior to that, any noise, any bang. And as soon as I realised, there'd been an accident, got up, had a look around, saw where the exits were. The train was a complete standstill, the lights were out, a lot of smoke in the carriage, not a lot of people moving. There'd been another tube stopped parallel to us in the tunnel. They seemed fine. We were trying to get from our carriage over to their carriage, but couldn't get the doors open. So it's very much a case of waiting in the tube. Next thing we heard, some guys were shouting at the far end of the train that it was fine to get off. They'd be taking people off the back end of the tube. So the worst affected started to walk through the carriages. Seemed to remember the next carriage down towards the back of the train that everyone seemed fine, the lights were on, people were standing, didn't seem injured. So proceeded to get off the back end of the train and out onto the platform, and was led up to the concourse where the firefighters and paramedics started to arrive.
Yeah, and there's people just screaming and just asking for help, and the underground staff were trying to get the people that were safe just to walk out, and they weren't actually going into those carriages. The carriages were filled with this dusty smoke.
With the entire tube system shut down and buses struggling to cope with crowds fleeing the area, London's road network was targeted. One of the capital's signature red double-decker buses was hit. The force of the explosion ripping the roof from the vehicle. Casualties were expected to be heavy. This was the scene captured by a passerby less than a minute after the explosion. The force of the blast blew passengers from their seats aboard the bus and left injured strewn across the road.
Just walking down through to central London, didn't even notice the bus, I just went across the road. and then, just blown off my feet and stuff. Yeah.
In a capital where people had woken up full of pride following yesterday's Olympic bid success, the horror of the attack was perhaps even more deeply felt. A coordinated series of bomb attacks above and below ground, targeting London's transport system with predictably appalling consequences. London's emergency services have had years to prepare for this disaster, and the biggest casualty evacuation ever seen on the streets of the capital quickly got underway. Police warning there could be further attacks.
We don't know if this is over yet. We've got to remain vigilant. The public have got to help the police and report anything that they see as suspicious to make sure we can deal with everything straight away. But we've got every resource out there at the moment, and we're doing our very best to keep London safe.
At Gleneagles, the G8 leaders stood shoulder to shoulder with Tony Blair. Later, back in London, the Prime Minister addressed the nation, promising to bring those responsible to justice.
There will, of course, now be the most intense police and security service action to make sure that we bring those responsible to justice. I would also pay tribute to the stoicism and resilience of the people of London who have responded in a way typical of them.
By late afternoon, the emergency services confirmed that all those trapped below ground had been brought up to safety. A senior police officer admitted recently it's not a question of if terrorists will hit the capital, only when. Tragically, that prophecy was realised on the streets of the capital this morning.
Scores were injured here, and 21 people died. Then, shortly after, a third blast, this time at Edgware Road Station. The explosion was so powerful it ripped through a carriage, a sidewall, and into two other trains.
The roof had just been blown upwards and outwards. Doors were on the track, and there was just people screaming and wailing. People are dying in here. Help us! Help us! And it was awful.
People comforted each other as they walked away. At least 5 people died here at Edgware Road. By now, a major emergency operation was underway. At 9:33, the entire London Underground network was suspended. At this point, officials thought they were facing power problems. But within an hour, there was an explosion at the back of a bus in Woburn Square. The entire top section was blown off. From the back, there were just a few seats remaining.
1 minute is bus, next moment the whole thing had just literally peeled off like a sardine tin. People got flung out from the top, and there was just debris, there was smoke, a lot of smoke, and then people were just kind of literally staggering around.
By now, Scotland Yard knew they were facing what they had long feared and expected, a coordinated terrorist attack on London. Some eyewitnesses reported seeing part of this bus flying through the air. With this incident in particular, police are investigating whether it was the work of a suicide bomber. If confirmed, this would be unprecedented in Western Europe. At least 2 people died here. Shortly after this incident, the police made their first major statement.
Stay where you are. All of London's transport is currently disabled or stopped, whether that's buses or trains. So the safest thing that everybody can do is to stay where they are.
The police put into effect their long-rehearsed plan for dealing with a terrorist attack. 3 hours after the first explosion, Tony Blair announced he was leaving the G8 summit and returning to London.
It's reasonably clear that there have been a series of terrorist attacks in London. There are obviously casualties, both people that have died and people seriously injured. And our thoughts and prayers, of course, are with the victims and their families.
The police say 4 bombs exploded today, and there were no warnings. These attacks were aimed at killing large numbers of people using public transport.
This clearly was a callous attack on purely innocent members of the public, deliberately designed to kill and injure innocent members of the public.
The government said tonight this had all the hallmarks of an al-Qaeda attack. organisation, coordination and ruthlessness.
We know that these people act in the name of Islam, but we also know that the vast and overwhelming majority of Muslims here and abroad are decent and law-abiding people who abhor this act of terrorism every bit as much as we do.
For thousands of people across the country today, there was the agony of not knowing what had happened to their loved ones.
We got a call early this morning and saying that my sister saying that, telling us basically what had happened and that she was hurt and that she's on the tube somewhere and that she's at Russell Square, but no one's really telling us anything at the moment, so we're just kind of waiting to see what happens. It's just the not knowing, the phones are down, it's just the not knowing. We just want to get through and know she's safe.
Tonight, London was a changed city, largely empty of traffic, people walking home, unable to use tubes or buses. But what was striking was the calmness of the crowds on the day that London suffered.
Yeah, hi Sean. Can you tell us where you were and what happened?
I was trying to get on the tube station in Kilburn Park, and they told me the tube station was closed, so I hopped on a bus, and as I was approaching the Edgware station, I saw people coming out of the train station, and they had obviously had smoke inhalation. I mean, you could see the burns on their faces, lacerations, hot broken glass, splatter burns. If you've ever seen those before, it looks like little black dots from small burns of hot pieces of glass. And pretty much as the police and paramedics and firefighters started showing up, they organized a command post in the Marks and Spencer's food market and the Hilton, and we began triaging patients. I was helping out the person who was in charge. She did a very good job. She was the doctor in charge there. And we began triaging patients, separating the patients who were badly injured from the ones who were walking wounded. And what we did is we got all their contact information, listed their injuries on a piece of paper, and then transported the people who were in most need of medical attention first, and then in priority after that for people who were less injured.
And real quickly, Sean, the most serious injuries, what did they involve?
The more serious injuries were major lacerations, most of them to the face. The places where people had been covered by clothing was relatively well protected. But for the people who had been exposed very closely to the blast, they had some major lacerations to the face. I didn't see any eye injuries.
Sean, we're going to check back with you. If you could just stand by, we'll be back with much more right after this. Let's go back to Sean Barron, who is 20 years old. He's from New Jersey. He is visiting London and witnessed what transpired there this morning. Sean, good morning again.
Hi, Katie.
You were mentioning that you helped triage several victims in the Marks and Spencer food court, as well as some hotels that have been opening up to help some of the injured. You were telling me about the extent of the most seriously injured. Can you elaborate on that for a moment?
On the serious injuries?
Yes.
Most of the people who were injured seriously were most likely treated in the tube station and transported directly to the hospital. The more serious injuries that we had, the people who were taken actually to the Hilton had some relatively bad burns on their face, legs, and arms. They had bad smoke inhalation, so they're having difficulty breathing, and that can get a little bit sticky later down the line. And then there was one or two people who obviously needed some stitches for major lacerations on the face and hands and arms.
Do you have a medical background, Sean?
Yes, I'm actually an EMT from Westfield, New Jersey.
Oh my gosh, well, it's fortunate that you were there to help so many of those people.
It was at 8:50 a.m. on the 7th of July 2005 that suicide bombers set off 3 simultaneous explosions on underground trains near Aldgate, Edgware Road and Russell Square. At Aldgate, the attack happened on a Circle Line train travelling between Liverpool Street and Aldgate, killing 7 people, injuring 171. Another explosion on a Circle Line train leaving Edgware Road killed 6 people and injured 163. Another bomb was detonated on a Piccadilly Line train travelling between King's Cross and Russell Square. 26 people were killed there, 340 were injured. Well, as the tube network was shut down in response to that, people turned to buses to continue their journeys that morning. But at 9:47 a.m., nearly an hour after that first explosion, another bomb went off on the top deck of a number 30 bus at Tavistock Square. That killed another 13 people and injured 110.
This is how it looked underground in a London subway train moments after one of the bombs exploded. This chaotic, terrifying scene was captured by a cell phone video camera. You can see the windows blown out on either side as people struggle to escape the stricken train.
No, in the interest of national security, I can't say anything at all. Ladies and gents, we need to clear now Russell Square. Please, for your safety, please start moving down.
And this is how some Londoners above ground learned their city was under attack, as police urgently evacuated whole neighborhoods. As bombs exploded across London's subway system, there were scenes reminiscent of New York on 9/11. There was that same look of stunned disbelief, the same dazed stare of the survivors, and the same grit and courage in the face of terror.
I heard a very loud bang, the lights went out and the carriage filled with smoke, and people were thrown forward.
I don't know what happened. You probably know more than me. It was just, I don't know, but there's some seriously injured people there. It's not good.
And with London brought to a standstill, scenes of thousands walking were also a reminder of similar scenes on 9/11. This was a London double-decker bus carrying commuters. A bomb tore off its roof and sides. The other bomb blasts were underground in subway tunnels and stations. The scenes of terror and chaos were all in stunning contrast with these scenes of celebration just 24 hours earlier. Reading the news, London had been chosen to host the 2012 Olympics. In times of crisis, the British rely on tea, and these Britons poured tea for police and passers-by. Americans woke up to urgent news flashes carrying grim images like this as the toll of dead and wounded continued to rise. U.S. networks stayed with the drama as it unfolded for much of the morning.
It's hard to know that there are more people that have to walk in our shoes.
Among those watching the drama unfold on TV was Lori Van Orken, whose husband was killed on 9/11.
You dream about it, you have nightmares about it, you wake up screaming about it, and here those people were doing what we've had these nightmares about for the last 4 years.
In Scotland, where the leaders of the world's richest nations are attending the G8 summit, a shaken Prime Minister Tony Blair had a defiant message for the terrorists.
The terrorists will not succeed. Today's bombings will not weaken in any way our resolve to uphold the most deeply held principles of our societies.
And the president expressed his outrage over this day of infamy.
The war on terror goes on.
The networks were jammed. Even landlines seemed to be difficult at a point. But coming into this scene, you know, I'm using one of the few modes of transport that's actually effective in central London now, and that's a bicycle. People streaming out of, if you understand London, the congestion zone area, which is basically the core of London, where the business is done. People coming out of there, I saw people coming out, their heads down, they're crying. They were saying things like, I knew this would happen one day, which is amazing. But as you were saying before, the British people, very stoic, very resolved. I've seen people coming up to the offices here who are sort of cording me off the area, bringing teas and giving sort of words of support to the officers and saying we understand what's going on and we appreciate what you're doing.
Tadek, what is the feeling on the streets? Is it panic? Is it fear? Is it calm? Is it a belief that the worst is over?
I think it's calm. I think that's the best way to describe it. You've got to remember that London is no stranger to terrorism. The IRA have made this capital city a target for quite some years in the past, so it's not a stranger to acts of terrorism. Certainly definitely there's a lot of confusion amongst many of the tourists here. I mean, this is an area where there are a lot of key tourist attractions, and I see in the streets people looking at their maps. They're asking other Londoners on the street, where can they go, what can they do, how can they get here. They seem to be a little lost at the moment, because once the major transport, the buses and the tubes, which have now come to a halt, have stopped, then it's pretty hard to navigate your way around. So there seems to be a sense of we don't know what to do amongst the tourists, but Londoners themselves are sort of getting on with things.
Right. We want to bring up this information. Sky, our sister network in London, says that Scotland Yard, their beat reporter Martin Brunt, the Sky reporter, is saying that sources have told him there are indications that the explosion that you see the remnants of, the right-hand side, that red top is the roof of a bus. The top half of the bus was blown off. As you can see, the bus is up in the right-hand corner. There are reports, according to Sky, that a suicide bomber was on board that bus. We have not gotten confirmation of that. That is according to a Sky reporter.
We've been talking this morning to Eyewitness Sean Barron. He's a 20-year-old from New Jersey who is in London. He's working as an intern there over the summer. He is also a volunteer EMT and rushed to the scene to help some of those who had been injured in the blast. Sean, good morning again.
Hi, Katie.
So tell us a little bit more about where you were when you saw this unfold. I understand you were riding a bus?
Yeah, I was on one of the double-decker buses looking out the front window, and I kind of saw a little bit of a bird's-eye view of the people coming out of the station. So I hopped off the bus and went over to help out.
Was it pure chaos, Sean, as people were pouring out, or did they come sort of slowly?
People were walking relatively slowly when they were coming out. I think some of them were still pretty shocked. However, I wouldn't describe it as chaos. The emergency services here were very well organized. They set up a command post in the Hilton where we quickly began to treat the patients and triage people, get their contact information and names, and then send them to the appropriate hospitals as quickly as possible.
Sean, it's Lester Holt. Was it clear to you and to the people pouring out of that station that this had been an attack, or was there plenty of confusion at that point?
No, they actually figured it out pretty quickly because we started hearing reports from different people who were getting calls from around the city saying that there was an explosion in one tube station and then another, and everyone put the pieces together very quickly.
Did people describe other passengers who might have either been killed or trapped or otherwise incapacitated on the trains below?
Yes, in the one train at Edgware Road, one of the patients who I was dealing with inside the hotel described a large hole which had been blown in the floor, and I believe in the process one gentleman was either thrown out of the train or fell through the hole, but he was pinned underneath one of the trains. I believe he might have been run over, and he was not in the Hilton, though. I would imagine that they either transported him directly from the tube station to the hospital.
Sean, are people still trapped underground at this point in time, as far as you know, or have most of them been rescued?
As far as I know, the vast majority of them have been rescued. We actually finished triaging patients in the Hilton, and over in Edgware Road, I haven't seen any ambulances coming in or out. It looks like they're all gone. But for the most part, they told the volunteers, thank you very much, and they're kind of sending us along.
I like to thank Londoners for the calm way they have responded to this cowardly attack, and echo the advice of Sir Ian Blair, the Commissioner of Police. Do not travel. Take the advice of the police, stay at home, wait if you are not at home until you hear over the radio or television the advice of the police about how you will proceed to get home later today. I have no doubt whatsoever that this is a terrorist attack, as has been claimed. We did hope in the first few minutes after hearing of the events on the Underground that it might simply be a maintenance tragedy. That was not the case. I have been able to stay in touch through the very excellent communications that were established for the eventuality that I might be out of the city at the time of the terrorist attack, and they have worked with remarkable effectiveness. And I will continue to be in touch until I board the plane that takes me back to London in the next few hours. I want to say one thing, specifically to the world today. This was not a terrorist attack against the mighty and the powerful. It was not aimed at presidents or prime ministers. It was aimed at ordinary working class Londoners, black and white, Muslim and Christian, Hindu and Jew, young and old. Indiscriminate attempt to slaughter, irrespective of any considerations for age, for caste, for religion, whatever. That isn't an ideology. It isn't even a perverted faith. It is just indiscriminate attempt at mass murder. And we know what the objective is. They seek to divide Londoners. They seek to turn Londoners against each other. I said yesterday to the IOC, this city of London is the greatest in the world because everybody lives side by side in harmony. And Londoners will not be divided by this cowardly attack. They will stand together in solidarity around those who have been injured, those who have been bereaved. And that is why I'm proud to be the mayor of that city. Finally, I wish to speak through you directly to those who came to London today to take life. I know that you personally do not fear to give your own life in exchange for taking others. It is why you are so dangerous. But I know you do fear that you may fail in your long-term objective to destroy our free society. And I can show you why you will fail. In the days that follow, look at our airports, look at our seaports, and look at our railway stations. And even after your cowardly attack, you will see that people from the rest of Britain, people from around the world, will arrive in London to become Londoners and to fulfill their dreams and achieve their potential. They choose to come to London, as so many have come before, because they come to be free, they come to live the life they choose, they come to be able to be themselves. They flee you because you tell them how they should live. They don't want that. And nothing you do, however many of us you kill, will stop that flight to our cities, where freedom is strong and where people can live in harmony with one another. Whatever you do, however many you kill, you will fail.
Hours after the panic and confusion in this tunnel, complete silence as a police scenes of crime evidence gatherer makes his way towards Circle Line locomotive 204. The train, which had been travelling between Aldgate and Liverpool Street stations in East London, is now empty of its passengers. But the horror they faced earlier that day is obvious. 7 people died here. Scores of others were injured in the powerful explosion which ripped through the second carriage from the front. Across London, another Scenes of Crime team records the aftermath of the terrorist attack at Edgware Road. 6 died here. Some the inquest heard had lain for a time mortally wounded amongst the twisted wreckage and scattered belongings. But they died before medical help could reach them. Such was the chaotic nature of the unfolding disaster, exacerbated by the difficulties of communicating and operating in the underground tunnels. Here at Russell Square, the platforms are empty. The whole network was shut down in the aftermath of the attacks. The bombing of this train accounted for the biggest single loss of life. 26 died at Russell Square. 6 were thrown from the train by the power of the blast. The inquest heard how this Piccadilly line service had been packed at the time of the explosion. The train had been carrying up to 1,500 passengers who had to clamber through the deep tunnels for almost half a mile to reach safety. While the Russell Square victims were trying to reach the surface, above ground another horror was unfolding. This number 30 bus blown apart by the 4th suicide bomber. These images were understandably difficult for the families to watch. and they know they've many months of distressing evidence ahead before the inquest finally rules on the events of July the 7th, 2005.